Good morning, American Lit, and happy Thursday. This is Mrs. Vandriot, Avi, and let's talk about A Raisin in the Sun. So, you guys started this play, hopefully, and hopefully you're really utilizing hi, Boo Boo. Here's my girl. Hopefully you're really utilizing the audio because it really helps. Like, I even listen to it. Girls, go outside if you're gonna be loud. I utilize it and it just helps you hear the different voices. They do a really good job of acting that out, but it also helps to read it while you're doing that. So I really suggest you do that. Girls, go outside. Hey, go play. Go play. Oh my gosh. Hi, Vandergreens. Okay, dialed in. Okay, so I'm just gonna go through some of the discussion questions, not all of them. I expect you to read it, and I expect you to go in depth with it on your own, but there's a few things I do wanna talk about just so we are on the same page. Okay, so setting of this play, hopefully that was a pretty easy one because it says it. It says the action of this play, I'm reading it over here, so that's why I'm looking over here, is set in Chicago's South Side, sometime between World War II and the present. So 1950s-ish in Chicago, okay? Hopefully you read all of that history stuff last week and you know what we kind of have going on in the 50s in general, but also in Chicago, right, is we have those restricted covenants. We have, okay, racism isn't legal anymore. No, let's separate but equal. That's not good. We want everyone together, yet we still have these little backhanded ways to have racism, right? Like these restricted covenants that say that Black people can't live in the same area as white people. And so that's what we have going on in the setting. And then we have this long description at the beginning of the apartment. So go in depth with that a little more. But it's definitely kind of this feeling of there was all these hopes at one point. Like I think of us moving into this house and oh my gosh, we're setting it up and getting maybe some new stuff, but some hand-me-downs and whatever. That's kind of how Big Mama thought of this little house. She bought it with her husband, right? And now there's a ton of people living there. Oh my goodness. And now it's just kind of run down. It says wariness has won the room. And so there's not really any new stuff. It's just kind of worn down. And so we have a lot of people living in one little area. And then it asked you to kind of describe Walter and Ruth's personality. So hopefully you know, I'm gonna Dora the Explorer right here. Walter and Ruth are, what's their relationship? Married. Okay, so it is a little confusing because we have a dad, Grandpa Walter, who's passed away, and then his son was named after him. So we have Walter, they call the grandpa Big Walter though. So we have Walter and Ruth, they're married. Ruth already, hopefully you can kind of see she's kind of the homemaker. She loves her family. She's doing what she can for them. Walter wants more, right? He's not content. He's constantly reaching, and he's maybe more of a dreamer than the rest of the family. Definitely how do you describe their relationship, right? A lot in this first scene, they're arguing, they're fighting. Maybe you see it more as playful. There is some playful stuff in there, but they're definitely not on the same page about a lot of stuff. Okay, moving on to what you would have read on Tuesday, I think, the second section. Why is it ironic that Walter asked for money on the way out? Hopefully you read this, right? Walter tries to present to his son Travis that he is this, we're fine, we're not hurting for money, we're good. And so he gives Travis 50 cents as he leaves. And then later when Walter leaves, he's like, oh, I need money to get to my job. And so it's kind of this joke that, oh, you're presenting this face to Travis that we're fine, we're good, we don't need money. And then he does need money. We observe more about Ruth and Walter's relationship. I'll let you kind of answer that. And then we kind of get this big bomb dropped. How does Walter want to invest the money? And so if I'm not sure if it already came up or if it'll come up later because obviously I've read this a few times. But this money is coming from Big Walter's life insurance. So Mama's husband, Big Walter, passed away, and he had life insurance, and so now they're getting this $10,000 check from his life insurance. And so it's a big deal. It's the most money they've seen in a while. They're waiting for this check. And so Walter decides he wants to invest the money in what kind of store? Great job, a liquor store, okay? And so he and his friend Bobo and Willie, he's got some nice friend names, are going to invest that money together into this liquor store. And so Ruth, right, what does she think? She's kind of like, it's mama's money at the end of the day. She's not necessarily overly like, I hate this idea, but she's like, Walter, it's not your money. So there's that, okay? And then we have lovely Benitha. I'm going to scroll down to where she comes in. Benitha is Walter's sister, so mama's daughter, or Ruth's sister-in-law, okay? So if it helps you to like write this all out, do it. Write the family tree. She's 20 and slim. She's as intense as her brother, so very intense. It says she wears a bright red flannel nightie, and her thick hair stands about her head. She is kind of this mixture of she talks like her family a little bit, which is more informal, but then she also has been educated, and so she talks pretty formally sometimes too. And so it says her voice is this mixture of how she's been raised to kind of talk more conversationally and chill, but also to talk educated, and it kind of goes back and forth. And so she comes in and she's like wanting to go to the bathroom. Also note, they live in this apartment. It's almost like a dorm, but their entire floor shares one bathroom. So that's why there's all this drama about the bathroom in the morning. Like, you guys are all quarantined right now. Imagine if you were sharing not only a bathroom with your whole family, one bathroom, but like everyone on your block. That's what's going on. So that's why it's a big deal. And so anyways, so we'll learn more about Benitha's character a little later, but she's the sister. Benitha also is kind of like Ruth, where she says, whatever mom says about the check is what's going to happen. I'm not a part of this. I'm not trying to take that check from her. Walter's kind of mad about that because he's like, yeah, because she's going to give part of the check to you. And you know that because she thinks what you're doing is important, which what does Benitha want to do? She wants to go to school to become a doctor. Okay, and so obviously mom is going to be all about that and give her some money. Okay, so then we have our last section, and so I can wrap this up. Now we have Mama, okay? How do we describe Mama? She's a woman in her early 60s, full-bodied and strong. She's one of those women of a certain grace and beauty. Her dark brown face is surrounded by white hair. So she's obviously, it said she was in her 60s. It says it looks like she's full of strength. She's overcome a lot. She's pretty funny. She's beautiful. And so she walks really straight up. She's very confident in herself. And so, but then it says her speech, on the other hand, is as careless as her carriage is precise. She's inclined to slur everything, and she's not soft or quiet. So her voice is really loud and crazy, and then she presents herself in a very dignified way. So she's kind of back and forth too, okay? She's definitely the head of this household. And then we have a little bit, one of my questions was, how do Mama and Ruth interact with Travis? We have Mama who babies Travis, right? That's her grandbaby. If you get, any of you guys have grandparents, you know that like grandparents where you're gonna get the candy or whatever, right? They spoil you. And then Ruth is obviously his mom. And so she's like, make your bed, do all this stuff. And so just with that, right? That's kind of how they treat them differently. But imagine, like, I love my in-laws and I love my parents. I would not want to live with them and have like multiple people parenting your child, right? And so they're making it work though. Okay. And then we have, what does Mama think she might want to do with the money? Mama, first of all, I do want to say she doesn't like that everyone's talking about the money. Her response to that is, somebody would have thought my children did all but starve to death the way they talk about money here. Like, Blue, drop my crock. Good girl. Okay. And she says, we got a big old check coming tomorrow. And so she's like, don't talk so much about the money. It's undignified. Like, chill. It's just money. It is 10 grand. That's a lot, but come on. Ruth says you should take a trip, go to Europe or somewhere like that. And then hopefully you're noticing some of the humor also. When you watch this as a play, there's a ton of humor. So for example, right, Mama says, you sound like I'm about to die. Who'd go with me? What I look like wandering around Europe by myself? And Ruth says, shoot, these here rich white women do it all the time. They don't think nothing of it. They pack suitcases and big steamships and whoosh, they gone. And Mama says, something always told me I wasn't no rich white woman, right? And so there's just some humor in there. This is a pretty humorous play if you would watch it. And so hopefully you're catching that. And then this is where she talks about the money. She says, I ain't rightly decided. Some of it's going to be put away for Benitha in her school. We already knew that, talked about that. And ain't nothing gonna touch that part of it. Nothing, she says. Like, that's for sure. I've decided that. And then she says, but been thinking the rest, we could maybe meet the notes on a little 2-story somewhere with a yard where Travis could play in the summertime. If we use part of the insurance for a down payment and everybody pitched in, I could maybe take on a little day work again a few days a week. So basically she says, I'm sick of living in this apartment. Maybe the rest, we could buy a little 2-story house where there's actually a yard where we have our own bathroom. And so that's the first time we hear maybe what she's thinking about doing with the money, and it's to do that, okay? And then we learn a little bit about their history, Mama's history, right? She talks about, I kind of talked about at the beginning, her and Walter moving into this house originally, and what it was like moving in there. But then I ask you, what hardship did Mama and Big Walter have to go through, and how did Big Walter react to that? So that is on page 48. I'm gonna give you 10 seconds to see if you can find it, or just recall it. Or this is a chance to take a drink of water. It's called wait time. I hope you guys appreciate that I dressed up for you today. This is a shirt from, I think, my sophomore year of high school. So, okay. You got the answer? Probably don't even remember the question. What big hardship did Mama and Big Walter have to go through? How did Big Walter react? It says on page, 48. Big Walter would come in here some night, slump down on that rug and look back at me, and I knew he was really down then. And then, Lord, when I lost that baby, little Claude, I almost thought I was going to lose Big Walter too. Oh, that man grieved himself. He was one man to love his children. Ruth says, ain't nothing can tear at you like losing your baby. And then Mama says, I guess that's how come that man finally worked himself to death like he'd done, like he was fighting his own war with this here world that took that baby from him. And then they talk a little bit more about what he's like, and so I would read that because the next question is analyze Big Walter's character. And so we know he loved his children. We know that they went through this big hardship where they lost a baby, and it just tore him up. He worked himself to death. He didn't want to deal with it, and so he just worked. And so in the next section, make sure you read 48, 49, 50. I'm not telling you it will be on the quiz, but it might be. And just know about Big Walter, because that's why little Walter, the dad Walter, is a lot like his dad. And so that comes from there. Okay, and then finishing this up, this will be, I think, a good little 15 to 20 minute lecture for you guys to watch for your homework today. So not too bad of a day, hopefully. But yeah, finishing this up. What does Benitha want to learn, and what does this say about her character? She wants to learn an instrument. I'll let you look up what instrument she wants to learn. But she is kind of this person, they joke that she joined a horseback riding club and all these things. Yeah, you can read it. All these things that she joined and then kind of quits. And so she's kind of like a flighty, like a person who jumps from one thing to another and just enjoys the freedom of that. We get not introduced, but we hear about him, this guy named George Murchison. He is a guy who is interested in Benitha. So they're all like, Mama and Ruth are like, go for him. He's rich. Like, why would you not marry someone who's rich? And Benitha doesn't really like George because he is shallow. Not deep, shallow. So she decides, I'm not too crazy about him, but we'll see if she gives him a chance later in the novel. And then lastly, we have this big blow up, okay? What are Benitha and Mama's differing views on God? And so one thing I want you to note is you'll do an assignment on this in the later weeks, but this play is cool because there are so many different themes, right? We have the racial stuff, we have the education stuff, we have a dream, the American dream stuff, right? But we also have this little bit of religion come in, where Mama's obviously very religious, believes in God. That's really important to her. And Benitha's kind of in her 20s. She's at the stage where she's like, I'm not sure what I believe, and I'm questioning it, and I'm trying to figure it out. And so they have this conversation, right? Where Benitha's like, I'm going to be a doctor. I don't know if I'm going to get married. And then Mama says, of course you're going to be a doctor, honey. And then she says, God willing. That's all she says. And Benitha says, God hasn't got a thing to do with it. And her mom says, Benitha, that wasn't necessary. Benitha says, well, neither is God. I get sick of hearing about God. And it's this fight back and forth about God. Mama's getting real mad because no one talks bad about God in her house. And basically Benitha says, Mama, you don't understand. God is just one idea I don't accept. It's not important. I don't even think about it. It's just I get tired of him getting credit for all the things the human race achieves through its own stubborn effort. There simply is no blasted God. There is only man, and man makes miracles. And so that is a very bold statement to say to your mom, who is a really strong Christian. And then it says, Mama absorbs this speech, studies her daughter, slowly rises, and slaps Benitha across the face. And so this is a very serious altercation. And then Mama says, now you say after me, in my mother's house, there still is a God. And so now Mama's like, you know what? You live in my house. You're going to say there's a God in my house. And so Benitha says, in my mother's house, there's still a God. I would definitely listen to this part because it's very intense and you can hear it in there speaking instead of mine. But that's definitely a big thing going on. So there's a lot of conflict in this house that you would imagine with people living in small quarters. Okay, and then at the very end, I don't know if I asked a question about this, but Mama's talking about how she wants a garden someday. That's really important to her. That'll come up later too. Flowers in a garden, symbolism for stuff. And then she says, Ruth, why don't you sing to me? Please sing. Ruth starts to sing, and then it says, she turns at last to see that Ruth has slipped quietly to the floor in a state of semi-consciousness. Ruth, Ruth, honey, what's the matter with you? Ruth. Ruth has fainted, and I left you on a cliffhanger. And so next week we will start scene 2 and see how Ruth is. So that was my video lecture. Hopefully you followed along. Hopefully it was able to clear some things up. If you have extra questions, let me know. Like I said, this week we'll do this. Maybe in the following weeks we'll try a Zoom. That one wasn't the highest response. People didn't love the Zoom idea, but it might be helpful. So sometimes we have to do things we don't want to do. Yeah, okay, that's it. Thanks for coming to my classroom. Also side note, we're not like prepping for the quarantine. That's from Levi's hands, which you're doing good. Okay? Okay, have a great day. Bye.